The difference between myself and Congressman Kirk is I have always told the truth, and principles matter, values matter. And as I mentioned earlier, you may not always agree with me, but you will always know where I stand. I will always tell you the truth.
But irony that a man who spends most of his campaign for the Senate criticizing my military record, and yet he never served a day in uniform
Were you shot at or not?
The shots are firing there in the Illinois Senate debate hosted by George Stephanopoulos last night.
Down and dirty Chicago-style politics. Top Line starts right now. Welcome to ABC News Top Line. I'm Karen Travers.
And I am Zach Wolf.
And each day we bring you the latest on politics, pop culture, news, sports, you name it. We are filling in today for Rick Klein and John Karl, who have hit the road. It's campaign season. Everybody's busy. But Zach, what's your first top line?
It's got to be closing the gap. You got John Karl out on the road there. But in Pennsylvania, where we've got another debate with George Stephanopoulos tonight, it appears that polls show it's a toss-up again. Joe Sestak appeared to be trailing to Pat Toomey, but now he's looking better. Karen, you know, you see the same thing in other places. Kentucky, people say, is a little bit closer than we thought. But then, you know, you go to Washington and it's looking a little worse for Democrats. What do we make of all this? Should we just get rid of the horse race here?
That's possibly one way to look at it, because there's so many polls out there and everybody's trying to jump on each one and say, this is telling us exactly what's going to happen. Really, Democrats are trying to stress turnout is going to be so key, especially in all these races where it's so close. That's why they're trying to rev up the base, because they think that can make up what is a 3 to 4 point difference in some of these really tight races. It is the age-old question, what women want, and President Obama is hoping that Democrats have the answer to that. He is hitting the campaign trail today, and he will be stumping over the next 3 days for Barbara Boxer in California and Patty Murray in Washington. Both of them are in really tight races, as we just said. The Democrats are really bringing out the big guns. Joe Biden was just out there, President Obama. Next week, the First Lady's out there. And they are also releasing a report tomorrow that says Democratic policies are better for women than Republican policies. They're going to look at how women have been affected by the recession. This is a very political message being released by the White House under the umbrella of this is an economic message.
Well, you know, defense wins championships, Karen. Women win elections, and Democrats really need them to come to their side. This, as you know, is the year of the Republican woman, or at least, you know, Sarah Palin would have us think so with Mama Grizzlies, and then we saw Michelle Obama out there as the mom-in-chief, so keep an eye on the women. Next up, rebound. There's a report today in the Star-Ledger out of New Jersey that ousted D.C. Schools Chief Michelle Rhee has been offered a job by Republican Governor Chris Christie there to head the education of New Jersey. She is a lightning rod in her views on school reform, and teacher accountability. This is something that the right has traditionally liked. You're going to see Michelle Rhee, I think, become a political football here. Mm-hmm. I don't know if she'll take this job in New Jersey, but we've already seen a number of Republicans, including Tim Pawlenty, say they really like her.
Mm-hmm. And you, of course, had Obama's Education Secretary Arne Duncan embracing her ideas for reform. They really put her out there. The White House did back away, though, from some of her tactics of talking about education reform and coming in and really stirring things up with the teachers' unions. They thought maybe more a deft hand might be better to do that. But it is interesting to see how she is being embraced by both sides at this point. But possibly she just wants to get back out to California.
KJ.
And really not a witch. We had to do Sarah Palin in our number 4 top line because we know that our colleagues will be watching to make sure we did. And this is possibly too good to be true. Sarah Palin, Halloween, campaigning in Delaware for Christine O'Donnell, who declared in that famous ad, "I am not a witch." The optics of this would be great, especially if they make the joke about being witches. It's just too perfect.
It would be perfect for us. We've tried to figure out if this is true. We have not independently confirmed that Sarah Palin will be in Delaware on Halloween, but everybody has their fingers crossed.
Get out your broomsticks and pointy hats.
That's right. And now, earlier today, we sat down with Darrell Issa. He's the congressman from California, and will soon be in charge of Republican election or investigations if they win the election in November. We're joined on Capitol Hill by Congressman Darrell Issa. He is the ranking Republican on the House Government Oversight Committee. That's the Investigations Committee. And if Republicans take control of the House, he'll be the chairman of that committee in charge of investigating the Obama administration. Now, Congressman, let me read you something that you said in the Wall Street Journal yesterday. You said, "It's pretty clear the American people expect us to use the existing gridlock to create compromise and advance their agenda. They want us to come together after we agree to disagree." how is your base, this anti-Washington Tea Party furor of Republicans, how are they going to react to compromise?
Well, Zach, Republicans, independents, even many Democrats want us to go back to core principles. They want us to do things the way we didn't do them when we had the majority the last time. So I really believe that a lot of it's going to be being fiscally responsible and holding government accountable. As you know, we didn't even do a budget this year. They're going to expect us to go back to the basics, make sure that every penny is well spent and well thought out, and quite frankly, make sure that a lot of that money is no longer spent.
Congressman, you recently told Time magazine that if you were to take this chairman's position, you said, you're going to be bored to tears with the work that the House Oversight Committee would do. And now Democrats are, of course, trying to demonize you right now, saying that you're chomping at the bit, as well as Republicans, to get back in there and issue subpoenas and try and bring things back to the 1990s, the way the committee was run then. What will be your first action if you take the chairmanship? What is your first issue that you're going to take up?
Well, the first thing I want the over 100 letters that have been sent and unanswered answered. I think that's fair. We have a responsibility to do oversight and get answers to important constitutional questions. The most important things that we're going to be picking up are public safety and large dollars that are wasted in government today. And when I talk about public safety, this is one of the areas that may bore people. But you know, we had a recall of spinach when in fact we should have recalled only the bad spinach. We have a food safety epidemic in this country where we have these mass with uncontrolled problems where we don't even seem to know who we should recall from. So we bring back millions of pounds of meat or millions of pounds of spinach. Now that's boring. But getting the FDA and the USDA to come together and get food safety properly done is an example where it's long overdue under both administrations. At the same time, the Presidential Records Act is a contentious issue, but let me explain. Both Republican and Democratic presidents are required by law to have all of what they say and do captured. This goes back to the Nixon era, and this administration has been using, if you will, private emails around the government. We're going to have to ask that the president come together and start playing by the rules. So we're going to have issues that are going to be contentious, we're going to have issues that are going to be boring, but we're going to do our job because that's what the American people expect us to do.
Now, Congressman, how are you going to be able to compromise with the White House on the one hand and on the other hand subpoena their Gmail? Isn't that going to create a tension? I mean, aren't you kind of trying to have it both ways?
Well, my intention is not to subpoena their Gmail. My intention is to make sure the Gmail is turned over to the archivists, the people responsible under the Presidential Records Act. I don't personally want to know what's in all of that mail. What I want it captured as required by law. And, you know, look, the word compromise has been misunderstood. Getting America back to the center right where it exists. And I'll give you just an easy example. In the last couple of days, Health and Human Services has been granting these huge amounts of waivers on Obamacare. These waivers are directly the opposite of what the bill says. I'd like to have the administration change the health care bill so that it actually mirrors what they're going to do, need to do to help America get insured and get better health care. That's an example where they need to come off of a failed bill they passed on a partisan basis and come together and do something that's good to help deal with a growing cost of health care that we both agree needs to be tackled.
Congressman, you said some things might be boring, but you also said there might be some contentious things that the committee would look at. Two things we have not talked about, Joe Sestak, Andrew Romanoff. How quickly do you think, or how quickly would you like to bring up that in front of the committee and look into whether or not the White House was wheeling and dealing behind the scenes to get them out of the race?
I think this is a good example where, to quote Eisenhower, you take complex problems and solve them by making them bigger. When we were doing that investigation, we discovered that the Bush administration had done the same thing by their own admission. So what we really have is a problem that goes through multiple administrations, that's wrong, that's currently illegal, but it's a practice of government that needs to change. I hope to work on a bipartisan basis to say it's got to stop on this president's watch, and it can no longer be tolerated. If I can get cooperation from the Democrats and the administration to end this practice, then we don't have to look retrospectively, but we can prospectively explain that American tax dollars will not be used for political gain of one party or the other in the future.
Congressman, one last question as we're running out of time. You have spent a lot of money in elections past, specifically on trying to get the job of governor in California. Meg Whitman, the Republican trying to get that job now, has spent way more money than you ever spent.
I did it on the cheap, didn't I?
Yeah, the $14 million was cheap. But, you know, what does this election tell us about self-financed candidates? You know, is spending personal money on campaigns wasted?
Well, I certainly think Mayor Bloomberg would say he made a good investment for New York, but at the same time, one of the challenges in California with 38 million people is just to get name ID equal to a career politician costs a lot of money. And I found that when I ran, and for about $10 million, I wasn't as well known as my opponent on election day. So I think all of us understand that starting early, starting in building is part of the American tradition. At the same time, Meg Whitman has an important message for California, one that she thinks she needs to take straight to the top, and I support that.
Congressman Darrell Issa, thanks very much.
You're very welcome.
That was a little earlier today. We talked to Congressman Darrell Issa. Karen, you know, are they measuring the drapes or?
Measuring the drapes and trying to figure out a way to catalog those Gmails, perhaps, too. White House officials better look out and figure out what they're going to say over chat, I guess.